Imagine being born of two worlds but belonging to none. From one lineage you inherit strength, resilience. From the other you inherit civilization, perhaps even intelligence. But from both, it's suspicion. To be a half-orc is not to be just mixed, it's to be mistrusted and misunderstood for your whole life. Hey everyone, welcome back, and a brief content warning before we start. This episode will include discussions of sexual assault and psychological impact of it upon children who are born of, well, SA. If that's not something you're up for listening to today, that's fine. Please skip it. Next week we'll be hopefully talking about something less serious. But for that now, grab a cuppa and let's talk about the Half-Orcs and where they came from and what it is to be one. In earlier editions of D&D, half-orcs were often described as being conceived during violent border raids between orcs and humans. That origin matters, and I feel like you can understand where it came from. Sexual assault in warfare happens a lot, and it's not talked about nearly as much as it should be, mostly because those people who have been through it probably don't want to report it, and those, well, a lot of people don't survive when it happens to them, which is terrifying, to be honest. And this is not an attack on anyone in particular. This is just a fact of warfare, that horrible people use warfare to do this. It happened in the Nanjing massacre. It happened during the wars in Kosovo and the entire region during the breakup of Yugoslavia. It happened during World War II. It happened during the Rwanda genocide. It happens when two people, if not more, hate each other this much. They view themselves as lesser, and it makes things like this happen. And I'm talking about it because it's important to this. It frames the species of half-orcs not as a culture but as a consequence of violence. They are born in violence, at least they were originally. And over time their lores evolved. Half-orcs now, they have families, communities, but I feel like if you were to be a half-orc or play half-orc, that idea would linger within the species. And there's a certain stigma there. They don't quite fit in with anyone, if you ask me. That makes them truly interesting, in my opinion. For our next part, let's step out of the fantasy and look at some real-world information. Because in our world, being a mixed-race child has consequences. You may experience more racial microaggressions because you're not one or the other. You're forced to try and prove your authenticity. You may feel you're not enough because you aren't parent A or parent B. You need to have increased social adaptability to fit in places. You will also have a broadened perspective as well, so it's not all terrible. There are good things to it. But there's a tension between exclusion and adaptability that's created by children who are born mixed race. I feel like half-orcs to have this as well, because they're not going to fit in perfectly with humans or orcs. In many fantasy settings, humans distrust them because the orc blood is in them, while orcs may see half-orcs as their weaker cousins. And then maybe because they have to live barbarian type lifestyles on the edge of civilization, they're stereotyped as barbaric and violent. And their intelligence is often underestimated, though they probably are just as smart as most humans. And for half-orcs, they have to earn their belonging among the civilized races of the world. It's not something they inherited. And that doesn't seem very fair to me. This is where I get into even heavier topic, because research on children born of SA shows deeply troubling patterns. One 2023 study, which I'll link below, found that 37% of boys born of SA show depression. They have higher rates of anxiety, thought and attention span issues, increased aggression and delinquent behaviour, and the stigma of being born of that, for boys in particular, they're looked as just as bad. Not in all cases, God, and they should never be held accountable for their father's sins, but it's only human to blame them. These children are often rejected not because of who they are, but because of what they represent. And that psychological burden is enormous. And with that, let's look at the half-orcs one more time. In many settings, they symbolize conquest, violence, shame, war. They are treated as living reminders, and when a child grows up being treated as a reminder of violence, they internalize something, and it's not always rage. Sometimes it's shame, sometimes it's hypervigilance, and sometimes it's hyper self-reliance, like relentlessly driven self-reliance. I touched on this in my tiefling video, that as a species they don't have a home, they have a community amongst themselves. And that's why home is far more important than geography. It's that feeling of being unquestioned, being seen without suspicion, and being safe to explore who you are. And half-orcs really get that. So, what do they get? Half-orcs forge identity instead of inheriting it. And that's why so many half-orcs, their characters lean towards the extremes. Think about a disciplined paladin trying to prove their goodness in the world, or going full barbarian and just embracing that rage. Or even then, maybe the hyper-competent sorcerer, or not sorcerer, sorry, wizard, who has dedicated themselves towards learning magic and has turned evil because they're sick of being looked down on by the humans and elves of the world. It could be a cliche looking for this, but it's also an adaptation. It's what a lot of people do in these situations where they feel ignored and treated like crap. Well, you know what? I'm going to excel at something, and either you excel to make yourself look better, or you excel to make everyone else look worse. Again, just like with my tiefling video, which I hope you've all seen before. If not, check it out below. Trauma doesn't create a single archetype. It creates survival strategies. Maybe for some half-orcs, it's belonging desperately. Just desperately looking to find somewhere to belong. Or overperform with the morality, like I said earlier. Or maybe it's to become that protector. Others, they could detach, they could harden, and they could decide that the world is hostile, so they're going to be hostile right back to it. And they may not be the best people for it, but they wouldn't be wrong for doing it. And these are just equally valid responses. Because at the end of the day, anything to survive, anything to keep your head above water. But it's not all bad. Because being between the worlds of man and orc, it can be quite beautiful. You've got cultural fluency. They have an emotional intelligence that neither of the species will have. They have a rare perspective to see the world in ways the others won't. They've got resilience, and they've got independence of identity. They don't have to be identified as a tribe or a skin color. They've got themselves. There's a rare power in that. Half-orcs are often forced to define themselves, and there's something just awe-inspiring about that in your character. You can write it into it or play it that way. You don't have to inherit the clan, the tribe, the city-state, the country. You build yourself up instead, and that's where you find your real strength. A half-orc is not a symbol of violence. A half-orc is what happens after the violence. And a good question that fantasy stories keep asking us is that if the world sees you as a reminder of its worst moments, who do you choose to become? So this one was a bit heavier, and I appreciate all of you for sticking by through this one. As always, comment below if there's another race or there's some gods you want me to cover. I'm kind of glad to get back to the race ones. I've been enjoying these. Not sure who's coming next. Think about that. But I hope you enjoyed. Keep an eye out. There will be more to come. Possibly Durgar. I need to think about that. Anyway, my name's David. I'm the Congruent Chronicler. I will see you all next week.